Hey guys, and welcome back to Castle Crush, and today we are going to be going through my top 5 legendary cards in Castle Crush here, and I have all 60 cards in the game, so we can easily talk about which ones are best in terms of legendary cards, as I have all 11 legendary cards currently in the game, and I played with all of them. I've spent decent time playing with pretty much all of them. So I have a decent idea of which ones I think are probably my favorites, and also just like the most used maybe in general. Let's start with probably number 5 on this list for me. Obviously 11 cards to choose from, and they're all pretty solid cards, well, mostly. But I think number 5 for me would probably have to be the Hollow Knight. And the Hollow Knight gets in on this list for a couple of different reasons. But the first is because it's really good in rushing decks, and also because it has a low mana cost. So really the low mana cost would be the first main reason here. It's a low mana cost card that is much stronger than it should be, kind of similar to how the Unchained Demon is pretty strong, but the Hollow Knight, for only 4 mana, it doesn't have any negative side effects, except that if it turns around, then of course it becomes your opponent's card, which can be really bad and can actually end matches in your opponent's favor. So you do have to be careful about that. But overall, if you're trying to go for an all-in style rushing deck, it really doesn't matter so much, because if you fail, whether or not you had the Hollow Knight there and they turned it around, you'd still probably fail. So it really doesn't matter for rushing decks, and it's kind of even if it turns around, you probably just lost anyways, or maybe not, but that's why I'd put the Hollow Knight probably as the number 5 card, and it only does melee damage. It's decently fast, which is also good for rushing decks. The number 4 card I would pick, this is tough. It's a little bit tough because there's some cards that should get in that probably won't. The number 4 card I think would have to be the Skull Queen, and it's not so much the Skull Queen herself, but it's her ability is so strong, and if your opponent isn't prepared for it, a lot of good players are. I mean, they understand how the Skull Queen works, but if they aren't, and you get skeletons going, I mean, the skeletons with her ability will just wreck things. You'll die, your castle will die really, really fast. So I think the Skull Queen is a fantastic card. She has decent health, but notice right here, 6 mana doesn't have as much health or attack as the Hollow Knight does. If you can get a lot of skeletons out there and then get the Skull Queen down, assuming your opponent doesn't have arrows or you have protection, you're going to be in really good shape to work with that. So yeah, definitely for me, I would put Skull Queen in number 4. I will say the Phoenix is not on this list. The Phoenix is not on this list because, well, the Phoenix is really weak. If it gets attacked, it has no health. It's really good against skeletons, but it's, other than skeletons and archers, it's not always that good. And to be fair, matches aren't always going on long enough for its effect per rebirth to actually matter that much. I think the Phoenix is a good card because it's a direct counter to skeletons. But if the skeletons get up close, then it will die. The order of these top 3 is debatable, but I think the cards are all some of the most used legendaries in Castle Crush. And for number 3, I'm going to pick the Vampire. And I'm going to pick the Vampire because it is a fantastic countering card to a lot of high health troops. And it only costs 5 mana to, all kinds of things. To Dryads in particular, it counters Dryads very well. Any sort of high health troop that doesn't have, say, giant growth on it or something, your opponent doesn't have a nature heal, especially if you have a nature heal, can be really effective. I mean, the Vampire can work against all kinds of high health cards, single cards. It doesn't perform quite as well against, a skeleton swarm, but it doesn't do terribly either. The Vampire for me it's just a fantastic counter card if your opponent plays a strong troop, assuming it doesn't have giant growth on that card, you can pretty much play the vampire and it will do a direct counter to that, and it will eat that card. So the only way to really get rid of the vampire is to either let it die by not feeding it troops, or to play something that's so drastically stronger than it that the amount of damage it's dealing is stronger, much stronger than the amount that it's stealing from you. So who is going to be number 2 on my list of top 5 legendary cards in Castle Crush? Well, number 2 is going to be the Dragon. You could really debate this back and forth between the Dragon and the Vampire, who should be where. Possibly the Vampire should be higher on this list, because the Vampire is a really powerful card for 5 mana. But the Dragon's just a really strong card in general if you can put it out there. The only reason it's not number 1 is pretty much because of its mana cost, and it could be number 3 even because of its mana cost. With 12 mana, there's a lot of matches where you're just not going to be able to get it out very quickly. And that's a problem if you don't have a deck that's set up very well for that, or if your opponent's deck is designed to beat you faster. But the Dragon's just really powerful in general, and it's pretty much good against most things. The Dragon is just a very powerful card that is going to just wreck most cards in the game. And it has the knockback effect. You know, despite its mana cost, I still think it's a really great legendary card. And it's by far the most raw, powerful one, without, you know, having any sort of boost or... You know, it's just its baseline stats are the most powerful, but I don't think it's necessarily the best card. And its mana cost certainly factors into that. And that is why I think number 1 on my list is going to be the Black Witch. And 1 and 2 might really be Black Witch Vampire, just because for 5 mana, those are both such great cards. And the Black Witch in particular is like probably the best defensive card in the game. The Black Witch just has an insane ability to completely waste your opponent's mana. They can have like 3 dragons in one lane, and you play the Black Witch with an Inferno, and it's all gone. So it can completely destroy pushes of much stronger cards, and it can completely turn the tide, it can completely turn the momentum of a match. Her effect is extremely powerful. On her own, she doesn't really do anything, but it's just her effect to turn all troops in her lane into skeletons. Just very powerful. So there it is, guys. Black Witch number 1 in the end here. I think 1 through 3 is definitely debatable, but I think Black Witch, Vampire, and the Dragon they're all cards that are strong against a variety of different other cards, and they can work in a variety of different situations. Of course, the Dragon is very high mana, but a lot of the other legendaries, that's my problem with them. And you may be noticing, of course, no Dark Angel in there. So let's talk about some of the other cards and why they didn't get on this list. So of course, the Dark Angel. The main problem with the Dark Angel is that, you know, if you played against anything that isn't like a skeleton or an archer, and if it's an archer, we're talking it has to be at close range. If it's at far range, the archers will do a lot of damage to it before it gets there. If you're not playing it against like basically skeletons or archers at close range, then it's not a very useful card. It's not, I mean, don't get me wrong, its attack is good. Its attack is pretty solid, but for 7 mana, it's not that good of a card unless you can get it some bonus health and attack. But the problem with the Dark Angel, of course, is the low health, and it's not super fast either. It's pretty slow, I think. Actually, I think 4 speed, it's, yeah, same speed as the Dragon, so it's pretty slow, and it costs 7 mana. Dark Angel, fantastic if you played against skeletons or archers at close range, or maybe like an Angel or a Fan Dancer, but anything else, it's going to have problems against it, and it won't be nearly as effective as some of the other legendaries. The Shaman's okay, but for 6 mana, I mean, for 1 less mana, you can get 2 cards that are arguably better than the Shaman, have better effects than the Shaman. And the Shaman usually has to be comboed behind something else or played against the right cards, like playing it against an Ape Pirate can be a good move. It's not like the most useful card because it doesn't have much health. The Storm Elemental is a fun card, but it has so little health when you first play it, it can easily be taken out. It is only 3 mana, so it's not that crazy, but when you first play it, it can't even take out a pack of 3 skeletons or 2 archers. It can't even take those out. By itself, it will just die to them. So unless you play that card just right in the right type of strategy, it's really a very niche card. The Archer Queen dies really easily to Inferno. Great card, actually. Her main problem is she doesn't have much... I mean, I'm not saying she should have more health, but she'll die really, really easily to Infernos and, you know, any sort of troop that gets close to her, so you have to play her just right. She's actually a pretty good card that I considered for this list, but in the end, it was just, I don't know, I didn't feel like she's useful enough in the widest variety of situations as the other cards that I mentioned, and you kind of do have to have your deck kind of set up around her a little bit. And finally, the Valkyrie. Actually a better card than it used to be, since they have now the mana cost bonuses down by 3 when you play it. And it's good against skeletons, very good against skeletons, because it has an area of effect damage attack. The Valkyrie's attack is not good against like single high health troops. High attack, high health troops. It's not good fighting against those. It's like you're 3 mana away from the dragon and you're 2 mana away from either the Black Knight or the Skull King. So it's like, is the Valkyrie really worth it at 9 mana? Anyways, so leave a like if you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought about this video in the comments and what other types of content I should create. Be sure to let me know what you thought about this particular list, if there are any legendaries that you'd put in a different order than these. Mostly, I just don't think the Dark Angel is really one of the best legendaries, despite all the hype around it. We'll keep using it and see how it performs, but I think there's much better legendaries in reality that already exist, so maybe subscribe if you're new to my channel. And thanks for watching, guys, and stay tuned for more videos.